It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Appreciate you being here, and the phone number remains, as always, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric, they return a week from this evening. I am trying to figure out what in the world happened at Trump's rally in Coachella over the weekend. On Saturday, if you've been anywhere near social media, you know that it just, a lot of confusion. Because the socials told us and the sheriff told us that there was the possibility of a third assassination attempt, or at least an assassination threat, at Donald Trump's massive rally out there in Riverside, California. And now it turns out that the whole thing may have been a mistake. And so you've got the sheriff who is now really on the defensive out there in Riverside, California. His name is Chad Bianco. So, you know, Donald Trump was out there in California, Riverside, California, Coachella, and he is giving this massive rally. It's a speech, the whole thing. And this guy tries to apparently make his way into the VIP area, and he's stopped by the deputies. And they found loaded guns in the guy's car. Apparently, the guy's car was a mess. Supposedly, he gave some fake ID or something like that. The license plate was fake as well. And so they pull him out of the car, and because they found the loaded guns, supposedly the guy said that he wanted to kill Donald Trump. At least that's what the sheriff and his deputies said that the guy said. Now, when I read this, I thought, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for a lot of different reasons, but this is what the sheriff said.
There were many irregularities that popped up. The deputy noticed that the interior of the vehicle was in quite disarray. The vehicle had an obviously fake license plate, and that prompted further investigation from our deputy into why the person was there and what he was doing. During that investigation, the deputy eventually found multiple passports with multiple names, multiple driver's license with different names. The vehicle was unregistered, and the license plate was what we in law enforcement would recognize as one that is homemade and indicative of a group of individuals that claim to be sovereign citizens. So during the investigation, obviously those identification documents were found, in addition to a loaded handgun and a shotgun.
All right, so it sounds all very dramatic, right? Now the guy is speaking out, and it sounds like this whole thing may have been a complete misunderstanding. And again, that sheriff, Chad Bianco in Riverside County, California, he may have made a big mistake. The man arrested, this is from the Daily Mail, the man arrested outside Donald Trump's Coachella rally has now broken his silence, confirming he is actually a supporter of former President Donald Trump and denied he was attempting to shoot him. Speaking out for the first time since his arrest, this Van Miller said that while he keeps firearms in his car to protect against death threats, he has never fired a gun in his life, and says that he is beyond a novice about them. So there's a lot that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I will just tell you that as a guy who, I fire guns, I have guns. I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination. But if I were a novice at guns, I would not keep loaded guns in my car. I would learn how to use them and become far better than a novice. But besides all that, this guy, Van Miller, 49, he is a registered Republican who they say tried to prevent fake VIP credentials at the Trump rally on Saturday, then found himself arrested on illegal firearms charges. What I don't understand is that the sheriff, at least according to some of the reporting, said that this guy Miller, when he was arrested, he said that he wanted to kill Donald Trump. But now he's saying that's nowhere near the case. He's actually a supporter of Donald Trump. He says, I'm an artist. I'm the last person that would cause any violence or harm to anybody. He tells the local paper there, the Press Enterprise, adding the accusations were complete BS. When asked by Fox News about his political beliefs, he did confirm, yes, I'm a 100% Donald Trump supporter. This guy, Van Miller, again, 49, also says that there are no falsified IDs on his person, that there was confusion because he's Armenian. And some use his full birth name and others don't to avoid potential anti-Armenian sentiment around the world. He further denied accusations made by Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco that he was part of an anti-government sovereign citizens movement, which I played you the audio a few minutes ago. That's one of the things that Bianco said. He says that is an absolute nonsensical statement. He says, I don't even think there is such a thing, he said, calling it equally nonsensical that Bianco saw him as far right. Now, you knew that something was a little weird when right-wing documentarian, at least that's how she's described, a woman by the name of Mindy Robinson, said this guy Miller has been a MAGA activist for years, had no intention of killing the former president, and said she has been to several pro-Donald Trump events with him. There's also all kinds of photographs of this guy online. I think it was at the RNC. And he's got photographs of him with Newt Gingrich, Vivek Ramaswamy, and a few. I saw an interview where he was right there with Donald Trump Jr. So clearly, it seems to me like this sheriff was just way out of his mind. He got this, it seems to me, way wrong. In an exclusive interview with DailyMail.com, Robinson, the woman who is a friend of this guy, Van Miller, described Miller as a journalist and a documentarian. And so now this sheriff is just getting blasted. By the way, the Secret Service, the authorities and even the Trump campaign, they're saying, yeah, this guy, he's not a would-be assassin. I mean, he's got a lot of weird stuff in his history, but, I mean, nothing that would say, and I'm not going to go through all that stuff, but basically, there's nothing here that would indicate that this guy is a would-be assassin. So now, of course, the sheriff, Chad Bianco, out there in Riverside, he's being accused of being dramatic. And so now he himself is on the defensive.
Holy crap, what did he show up with all of that stuff for? An unregistered vehicle with fake license plate and loaded firearms. If you're asking me right now, I probably did have deputies that prevented the third assassination attempt. If we are that politically lost, that we have lost sight of common sense and reality and reason, that we can't say that, holy crap, what did he show up with all of that stuff for and loaded guns, and I'm going to be accused of being dramatic? We have a serious problem in this country because this is common sense and reason.
Well, I don't know if he was dramatic, but he was certainly, it seems, wrong in this situation. So now I guess the whole thing is just going to be swept under the rug, or just, it's like, never mind. But I think it is obvious to everyone that, no, this was not a third assassination attempt against the life of Donald Trump. But it was a big deal, man. I mean, for, a little while, a few hours last night, I think probably in this morning, I don't know exactly when the whole thing broke, but it just came out here in the last couple of hours that this guy was nowhere near an assassin. By the way, you can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. Also, please do me a favor and follow me on X, if you would, both at Dan Mandis Show. And I'm always posting. I'm always tweeting, if you will. And I've got a lot of stories up on my feed right now on X, again, at Dan Mandis Show. It's a very busy evening because there's a lot of great audio out there. And J.D. Vance. Now, I'm just here to tell you that anybody on the left and any media outlet that tries to tell you, you remember, because, you folks are smart and you listen to Red Eye Radio and you listen to talk radio, so you know what's going on. You remember a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, the media, their narrative was that Donald Trump actually regretted choosing J.D. Vance as his running mate. Actually, I believe that's Kamala Harris. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But J.D. Vance has now gone viral yet again because he had this insane appearance with Martha Raddatz. I call her Crying Martha because it's like it seems like she's always like on the verge of tears. But he's on with Martha Raddatz, and the interview was just a complete and utter train wreck for Martha Raddatz because J.D. Vance really put her in her place. Now, here's how the interview began. This was a conversation, again, Martha Raddatz, and they're talking about illegal immigration.
Trump campaigning in Aurora, a city he's called a war zone, overrun by a Venezuelan gang.
Members of the gang now beat down doors with hammers and engage in open gun battles with rival groups in this once peaceful, beautiful, pretty crime-free community.
A claim strongly disputed by local officials, including the city's Republican mayor. But Trump continued regardless of the facts.
So I do find it interesting. And again, that was the introduction to the interview with J.D. Vance. One of the things that I noticed, and again, and this is on my X feed at Dan Mandis Show, is that she clearly, the entire intro, and it was about 45 to 50 seconds, it painted Donald Trump as literally lying about everything that he said on stage. Basically calling Trump a liar and not caring about the facts. But the one that really did make headlines was the battle J.D. Vance over Martha Raddatz regarding illegal immigration. Now, listen, we've all seen, because it all goes back to Aurora, Colorado. And we have seen the videos of those gang members, running around. They've got guns. They've got knives. And we've also heard the stories as to how bad the crime is in these apartment complexes that this Venezuelan gang is supposedly taken over. But an Aurora City Council member has actually said that the local police have asked her for help in dealing with this issue. But as you just heard Martha Raddatz report, the Republican mayor is saying, oh, this is grossly exaggerated. This is really not going on. Wait till you hear how J.D. Vance answers the challenges of Martha Raddatz. I will tell you that this is J.D. Vance. And if you're as much of a J.D. Vance fan as I am, you will love this because this is J.D. Vance at his absolute finest. I'll talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
This report is brought to you by Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. As the seasons change, so does truck maintenance. Cold weather can affect everything from your batteries and air brake system to tire inflation and fuel lines. Here's a maintenance tip to help make sure your rig is ready when winter comes knocking. When water and moisture build in your air brake system in the dead of winter, it will almost certainly freeze and turn to ice, which can damage valves, air dryers, and other air system components. Be sure to inspect your system for any air leaks and to confirm the system is receiving a clear air supply. Check and drain your air tanks daily to keep water, contaminants, and corrosion at bay. Find a professional service center near you to learn more about winterizing your truck or to have your air brake system inspected today.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric right here on Red Eye Radio. So a great, and I mean great, exchange between crying Martha Raddatz and J.D. Vance. They were arguing, and this, by the way, went viral over the weekend, where they're arguing about illegal immigration and what is going on in Aurora, Colorado. You remember the Venezuelan gang supposedly had taken over some apartment complexes, and this was a really big story. Again, we've seen the videos of the gang members running around with guns and knives. We heard the stories as to how bad the crime is in these apartment complexes. An Aurora City Council member, as I mentioned before, actually said the cops had asked her to help in dealing with this deadly Venezuelan gang. Even this quote from ColoradoPolitics.com, Aurora officials who initially denied the claims of intense gang activities have since acknowledged that members of Tren de Aragua, a gang that originated in the prisons of Venezuela, have been responsible for crimes at a group of apartment buildings. And despite all of that, you've got Martha Raddatz still saying, oh, Donald Trump is out there spreading lies and misinformation.
Do you support Donald Trump making those claims that the Republican mayor says were grossly exaggerated and have hurt the city's identity and sense of safety? I understand what you're saying, that some people left behind, but he's making these statements that the mayor is flat out disputing.
Well, Martha, you just said the mayor said they were exaggerated.
Grossly exaggerated.
That means there's got to be some element of truth here. And of course, President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you heard Martha Raddatz say that, well, Donald Trump, he's the people of Aurora, they don't feel safe because of the comments made by Donald Trump. Really? Pretty sure, Martha Raddatz, that the reason why people in Colorado, in Aurora, Colorado, I used to live there, by the way, and they don't feel safe. I'm pretty sure they don't feel safe because of the Venezuelan gang. I mean, if you've seen the video of what's going on or the videos of what's going on, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And here's the deal with the Republican mayor of Aurora, Colorado, a guy by the name of Mike Kaufman. He has been someone who has not been a fan of Donald Trump. He actually ran a congressional ad promising to stand up to Donald Trump, by the way, as a Republican, saying that he was going to stand up to Donald Trump. Well, he lost to a Democrat. That was a losing congressional reelection campaign. He distanced himself from Donald Trump. So the guy, the Republican mayor of Aurora, Mike Kaufman, it may just be that he has some sort of personal bias against Donald Trump. But then this amazing slam dunk from J.D. Vance.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened.
Martha.
I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again.
Oh, there's more. There's a lot more. Stay close. It's Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you listening to Red Eye Radio. By the way, I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on a proud Red Eye Radio affiliate, Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and I'm on the morning show. 6 to 10 Eastern. You can check us out online or on the socials, YouTube and Facebook as well, if you're one of those people that likes to watch radio people do their radio shows. Now, I'm playing some audio, and it's really incredible audio. And maybe if you've been on the socials over the weekend, you've heard this comment from J.D. Vance, where he says to Martha Raddatz, do hear yourself. You're basically saying, well, you know, the mayor of Aurora, Colorado, says that only a handful of apartment buildings have been taken over by Venezuelan gangbangers. I mean, it's almost like, and I love what he says, it's like, do you hear yourself? I mean, honestly, you could use that phrase, do you hear yourself, for just about any talking head member of the news media, because they're so lacking in really common sense. Because what's happening, and I'm going to play this audio by J.D. Vance yet again, but really, they are so infused with Trump derangement syndrome that they throw all other, literally, common sense out the window. And can I tell you what's going on? Before I replay this audio, can I tell you what's going on? They're beginning to panic, folks. They're beginning to panic. Because Donald Trump is looking really good. He's got all the momentum right now. And Kamala Harris, her campaign is literally crashing to the ground. And no matter what they try to do to Donald Trump, it's not working. It's not working. And I've got like 30 sound bites this morning, and I'm going to play every darn one of them. But they all go back to a central theme. And that central theme is that the Democrats are panicking. And no matter what they try to do, it's not sticking. And so the latest Hail Mary by Kamala Harris, wait till you hear the audio. The latest Hail Mary by Kamala Harris is complaining about Donald Trump's medical records. I kid you not. I'm going to do that as soon as I finish this, which is the conversation regarding illegal immigration. This is J.D. Vance, and he was on with Martha Raddatz, Donald Trump, going to Aurora, Colorado, and talking to locals on the ground about these Venezuelan illegal alien gangbangers and how they've taken over these apartment complexes.
See what happened.
Martha.
I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs.
Yep.
I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again.
See, that's the astonishing thing about Martha Raddatz. But, I mean, you got Kirsten Welker and all kinds of other media outlets that do the same thing, where they nitpick over the littlest thing with Donald Trump, as opposed to the bigger picture problems that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have created in our country. Again, from ColoradoPolitics.com, last August, 300 people were evicted from the Aspen Grove apartments in Aurora in an urgent dispossession that officials claimed was for the safety of the residents. They say maybe you saw the videos. Mountains of trash had overflowed into the parking lot, which brought, of course, rodents. Residents also complained of heat issues, water leaks, broken windows, and burnt-out kitchens. The city actually kicked all these people out, 300 people, and boarded up and fenced off the complex. Initially, local officials dismissed the assertion by the property management company that the presence of gang members precluded it from doing its work at Aspen Grove and that it feared for the safety of its staffers and residents. The city called it an alternative narrative to the numerous code violations and the poor condition of the building. Then, when all the videos started coming out and the residents started speaking up, officials began to backtrack. They began to walk back their statements after the video of armed men barging into apartment units surfaced and a trove of letters from a law firm representing CBZ management written a month before the federal government acknowledged TDA, Tren de Aragua, had extended its tentacles into Denver, became public. Yeah, they ended up in Denver, courtesy of the Biden administration, and then Aurora is basically right there next to Denver. And in they came. And they found these apartment complexes, and they did, seems to me, take over these complexes. I mean, it feels like we're quibbling over the stupidest stuff. I mean, the management company, the people that owned or managed the apartment complex actually hired a law firm to figure out what in the world was going on. And the law firm said, yeah, there's a problem. They say a national law firm, and again, this is ColoradoPolitics.com. This isn't some right-wing talk show host. This is ColoradoPolitics.com. They say more recently, a national law firm that investigated the claims said that though violence and intimidation, they went through violence and intimidation. The gang took over Whispering Pines, another complex owned by CBZ management. And they sought to collect up to half of the rent from leaseholders, drying up collections for the landlord, according to a law firm's investigation. But I love what Martha Raddatz says.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said.
You see what she's doing? I mean, it is stunning. You know, she won't admit to any of the other things that are going on. She is just, you know, really concerned about.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said.
Got it. Crying Martha Raddatz. And so basically, I also want to share, because she knew that she was beaten on this, but I also want to share a few headlines in just the last couple of days just to prove the point that J.D. Vance was saying, that the media is nitpicking the things that Trump says and purposefully ignoring what is really going on. First of all, this is from the New York Post. Tren de Aragua, La Barbie, is the face of Harris Biden's border policies. Her name is Estefania Primera. She is a tattooed, pierced Tren de Aragua gang member dubbed La Barbie, who allegedly ran a sex trafficking ring out of the now shuttered Gateway Hotel in El Paso. Wait, what? Did they take over a hotel in El Paso? Yes, as a matter of fact, they did. And they had all kinds of underage girls that were being sex trafficked. Oh, but don't worry, Martha Raddatz.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said.
Got it. Let's not worry about anything else. Let's not worry about Tren de Aragua getting 14 and 15 and 16-year-old girls and allowing them to be gang raped in this hotel that they took over in El Paso, which is exactly what happened. Authorities were able to arrest her September 27th, but she shouldn't have been roaming free in the first place. She had jumped the border illegally in August of 2023, yet was released into our country with nothing but an ankle monitor, which she quickly ditched. And she's into sex trafficking minors, which Tren de Aragua, they do. That's part of what they do. They regularly smuggle in desperate migrants and then forces them into prostitution to pay off their debts, essentially turning them into sex slaves. One victim claimed that she was drugged by this woman, Primera, who then brought in a group of men to gang rape her while she was unconscious. But apparently Martha Raddatz just doesn't care.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said.
From Fox News, here's another story. Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. This gang is recruiting kids from Texas middle schools. Locals are horrified that the recruitment, along with drug and human trafficking, keeps happening. So I want you to imagine your 6th grader, your 7th grader, your 8th grader, your 5th grader. And man, they're just trying to go to school. But you've got Tren de Aragua that is trying to recruit these kids, these little middle schooler kids, into their deadly gang.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said.
Do you see how incredible she sounds? Where when J.D. Vance says, "Do you even hear yourself?" We have all of these horrific headlines that are out there of middle school kids being recruited into this Venezuelan gang, this deadly Venezuelan gang. And then you've got these other stories of 13, 14, 15-year-olds who are being smuggled into this country and then gang raped in hotels or motels that are being taken over by this gang in El Paso. But she is so focused on this one little thing where Donald Trump said that Tren de Aragua is taking over bunch of apartment complexes, and she says, well, no, it's only a handful. Okay, got it. Just amazing. You know, the media keeps asking, why doesn't Donald Trump talk about the policies that he's going to invoke to help all of this instead of telling all of these lies? Because that's what they say. Oh, he's, all the pearl clutching, right? Oh, he's telling all of these lies. And they say, why doesn't he talk about policy? Well, he does talk about policy. He talks about policy all the time.
I'm announcing today that upon taking office, we will have an Operation Aurora at the federal level to expedite the removals of these savage gangs. And I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Think of that. That's a long time ago, right? Mm-hmm. To target and dismantle every migrant criminal network operating on American soil.
All right, so he announced that when he was in Aurora, Colorado. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798, they say, lets the president authorize citizens of enemy nations to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed if they are deemed a threat to the U.S. during wartime. Now, that's the question. Will this be able to pass legal muster? Because technically, they'll say we're not at war. I would say we are sort of at war in the sense that we are at war with illegal immigration. But they say the invocation of the act would, in theory, allow Donald Trump to order summary deportation of illegal immigrants without first getting permission from an immigration judge. Any attempt by Trump to invoke the 18th century law, they say, will likely face legal challenges from immigration advocates and defense attorneys, including that it's only meant to be used during times of actual war. But, at least the former president wants to do something, which is more than we can say for Kamala Harris. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. They return a week from tonight. And by the way, I was quoting this article in Colorado Politics. It's coloradopolitics.com, as they are documenting what really is going on in Aurora, Colorado with this Venezuelan gang. If you want to check that out, I went ahead and I posted the entire article, a link to the entire article. It is on my X feed at Dan Mandis Show. Follow me if you would. There's also, I have posted a lot tonight, but one of the things that you also want to check out is their latest polling, which I've also X'd out, tweeted out, whatever, posted on my X feed. I'm telling you, and I've got the numbers coming up next, the left is absolutely apoplectic. Details coming up. Red Eye Radio.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric, they return a week from this morning, and I'm going to be here all week. You can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. You can also, if you would, throw the host a bone and follow me on X. I post on there a lot, so if you want to follow me and get more information on a lot of the stories that I follow, you want to find me there on X at Dan Mandis Show. The left is panicking, clearly panicking. Now, I'm going to tell you that it was, maybe 5, 6, 7 weeks ago now. But I said there's something going on within the Democrat Party. They've got some internal polling, but you can tell that all of a sudden Kamala Harris, she's demanding that Donald Trump go in for another debate. She ends up going down to the border. There's all these signs. 7, 8 weeks ago, there were these signs that something was up. There was some internal polling that was really beginning to worry the Democrats, and then all of a sudden, Kamala Harris is doing things that she wasn't doing before. Because the polling was beginning to show what we all now know. And I said it at the time, by the way, that, there's something going on. That the momentum that Kamala Harris had coming out of that second debate was beginning to crash. And that is on full display right now, because that is exactly what's going on. We've seen this coming, and Gary and Eric certainly have been talking about the fact that her polling has been going down, and it's been going down a lot. But not only has her polling been going down, her momentum is crashing. Donald Trump's is going up. And here's the problem that they have. The problem that they have is that the only thing that they can do to stop this is to get Kamala Harris to speak, to go on interviews, to maybe do a gaggle, or, gaggle, if you don't know what that is, that's a press gaggle. Get all these members of the media, of the press, just asking her questions. But the problem that they have is that the more that Kamala Harris speaks, the worse she sounds. Polls are now clearly showing, and there is a ton of polls that were released yesterday, and every single one of those polls shows what I'm telling you, is that the momentum that Donald Trump has is real. And the momentum that Kamala Harris had is dissipating. All of a sudden, last week, she had this media, put this in air quotes, right? The media blitz. It was hardly a media blitz. But that was also an indicator that she needs to get out there. She needs to do something. She went on a podcast. She went on The View. She went on Howard Stern. And yes, she went on 60 Minutes as well. A very ill-fated interview on 60 Minutes. We'll get into that here coming up. But that's hardly a blitz. We all know that 60 Minutes was trying to edit her interview together so that she sounded more concise and more confident. They got found out. Details on that straight ahead. But none of this is moving the needle. So now they're doing Hail Marys. They're going to toss a Hail Mary, and this was Kamala Harris. As she's out there now trying to get Donald Trump's medical records.
So today I released my medical records, as has, I believe, every candidate for president of the United States except Donald Trump in this election cycle. And it's just a further example of his lack of transparency.
Are you kidding me? Did you hear what she said? She said that Donald Trump has a lack of transparency.
And it's just a further example of his lack of transparency.
Yeah, that is the best part of that audio bite, is her saying that Donald Trump has a lack of transparency. It's like, really? Have you looked in the mirror? Do you have any self-awareness whatsoever? Donald Trump has done more interviews in the last month than Kamala Harris has done during her entire campaign. I might even say that since Donald Trump started his campaign, he's done more interviews than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden combined since the beginning of their presidency. And yet she is out there saying that Donald Trump has a lack of transparency. You hide behind, I would say to Kamala Harris, you hide behind mostly friendly interviews, and even those you manage to screw up. And now we're talking about medical records? Really? Is that where you want to go with this? Is medical records? Really? And by the way, Donald Trump has put out letters, just so you know, he has put out letters from his physicians, Ronnie Jackson and another personal doctor, but they say that he has not yet actually released his medical records. Now, I guess the question is, should he, and does it matter? The funny thing is that the media is playing right into this. And this is the same media that ignored Joe Biden's rapidly declining cognitive skills for literally years. And now suddenly they're hand-wringing, they're concerned over Donald Trump's medical records. I mean, it's like a Hail Mary. This is what I'm telling you. They are panicking. Kirsten Welker had House Speaker Mike Johnson on Meet the Press to ask about a number of things. And she asked Johnson if Donald Trump should release those medical records. Listen to how that conversation played out.
He didn't release his medical records. You don't want to know things like his cholesterol level, whether he's dealing with any issue that we may not know about, if he's going to be commander-in-chief. And he also said he would release cognitive tests.
Listen to your question.
Should he release that?
The American people, Kristen, the American people don't care about the cholesterol level of Donald Trump. They care about the cost of living and the fact they cannot pay for groceries because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's policies have put them in that situation. The medical records are irrelevant. Let's talk about things that the American people care about. That's why Donald Trump is surging in the polls, because he's doing that on stages, in interviews, nonstop around the clock, and Kamala Harris has done nothing. Every time she talks, her numbers go down because she is uniquely unqualified to be the commander-in-chief at one of the most dangerous times in the history of the country.
And you know why it's one of the most dangerous times in our history? It's because of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I mean, let's be honest. While Kamala Harris is out there calling out Donald Trump for not releasing his medical records and the supposed lack of transparency, Kirsten Welker out there breathlessly saying, so don't you want to know what Donald Trump's cholesterol level is? Please. Meantime, we have all of these illegal aliens in our country. We have them committing horrific crimes. We have, of course, the war between Ukraine and Russia continuing. We have Israel, of course, defending itself against Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels. And, Joe Biden is the one that emboldened Iran to continue funding all of that terrorism, and Joe Biden looking the other way, allowing Iran to sell all of that oil to China. That means that Iran got billions of dollars to give to Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthi rebels. That's why we live in such a dangerous time, because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So Mike Johnson is absolutely right. I mean, it's almost like you want to say to the entire news media, do you hear yourself? Like J.D. Vance said to Martha Raddatz. Should Donald Trump release his medical records, given the fact that Kamala Harris has decided to release hers and then is calling for transparency? Of course, that call for transparency is a joke. But here's the thing. Part of me thinks, why should Donald Trump play that game? Release it, don't release it. I don't think it's going to move the needle either way for Kamala Harris. This interview with Kirsten Welker, I swear, these things are the most painful to watch, because she argues and belittles the guests, and it gets so laborious. I mean, case in point.
We're 3 weeks from Election Day. Former President Trump continues to make false claims. Let me read you a couple of them. Venezuelan gang members have overrun an apartment complex, he says, in Aurora, Colorado. Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio are eating cats and dogs. FEMA funds have been redirected to house migrants. Mr. Speaker, all of those claims have been debunked. If former President Trump is so confident in his policies, yes, they haven't. But if former President Trump is so confident in his policies, why not make the argument along policy lines? Why say things that have been debunked by local officials?
I mean, here's the thing. Donald Trump, and we talked about this in the last hour, Donald Trump does talk about policy. He speaks about policy all the time. You know what else he does? He speaks about the bad policy of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I mean, if you really want to talk about policy, let's go down the list of the things that Kamala Harris used to believe, and now she completely has gone the other way. Totally going from one of, if not the most progressive senators, to now becoming a total moderate. She calls that consensus building. I call that flip-flopping and a liar. Now, the genesis of the first two stories, I played you the Kirsten Welker audio, and she's talking about Donald Trump talking about the eating of the cats and dogs by the Haitians and the Venezuelans taking over the apartment complexes. Migrants are taking over apartment buildings, and Haitians are eating cats, at least according to the people on the ground. Now, whether or not these two stories are reality or not, the people on the ground, they're saying that it's true. But the issue is illegal immigration, period. And Donald Trump has constantly discussed illegal immigration and his policies and the policies of Biden and Harris. Now, local officials will tell you something different than the people, the locals on the ground. I choose to believe the people on the ground with a grain of salt. But by the way, here's the deal. It's Kirsten Welker that is bringing these things up yet again. It's not Donald Trump. It's Kirsten Welker. You have people in the towns of Aurora, Colorado and Springfield, Ohio that have said these things are true. Local politicians, at least some, say it isn't. Ultimately, it's the policy that does need to be discussed. And I actually agree with Welker on that. Let's just stick to the border and the number of people that have come across that border and the daily discussions of migrants or illegal aliens who have killed Americans. Almost every day there's another story. And Welker, she brings these things up because she doesn't want to talk about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungary. They don't want to talk about the guy from Afghanistan who came here after the botched withdrawal. We found out about this story on Friday. Guy comes here, botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. He comes over here through either Biden's special immigration visas or he was paroled into this country. Nobody really knows. The story keeps changing. But he was going to attack and kill as many Americans as possible in an election day terror attack. This guy, one way or another, came in under Joe Biden. And the fact that nobody knows how this guy came here, this 27-year-old Afghanistan national, nobody knows how he came into this country. That's the bigger story than Donald Trump talking about Haitians eating cats and dogs, or the story about the Venezuelan migrants taking over apartment buildings. I think there's truth to all of these stories. But why in the world is Kirsten Welker bringing this up? When Donald Trump has literally said all of these things, and J.D. Vance and many others have said, we're speaking to people on the ground who say this is happening. But honestly, it's like old news. Why do you talk about what's going on right now? Because Kirsten Welker and Martha Raddatz and the left can't. Because all of these stories make Joe Biden look really bad. And it's a danger to America. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Like the chief financial officer of any company, you have to be concerned about rising costs, especially without increases in revenue. Trying to reduce costs, let alone make sense of them, can be a complicated task. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. A penny saved could be $1,000 earned. Saving just 1 penny per mile over 100,000 miles driven annually will deliver $1,000 to the bottom line at the end of the year. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
$866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. Kind of poking some fun here at the media and Kirsten Welker as she is interviewing Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, a Republican, and he's chiding her because she is trying to get the Republicans to chastise Donald Trump and agree that he should release his medical records, which I do find rather funny because this is the same media that had absolutely no interest whatsoever in Joe Biden's cognitive decline. But now all of a sudden, Kirsten Welker, as I played in the audio previously, she's suddenly very interested in Donald Trump's cholesterol. She said it. That was her words. And as Mike Johnson said, listen, nobody cares about Donald Trump's cholesterol level. And then they started talking about FEMA.
This FEMA dollars going to resettle migrants, that is a fact. I mean, that is an objective fact. What he's talking about, it's not the disaster relief fund, but it's another fund that FEMA used to resettle all the illegal aliens that they let across the open border.
Mr.
Kamala
Speaker,
Harris, the border czar, was the engineer of that.
I do have to, the FEMA funds were not redirected to house migrants. That has been debunked. It's a separate fund. FEMA has said as much.
That's right.
But
That's
just
right.
to the substance, why not make the argument on the
Hold on.
substance of the policies, Mr. Speaker?
I'm trying to do that. Let me do that. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, as its name implies, should be working on federal emergency management, not resettling illegal aliens that are violating federal law.
So the whole issue in the discussion of FEMA dollars being used for illegal aliens, why do I feel like this story just keeps going on and on? Because this is all semantics. There are various accounts within FEMA, and some are to be used for disaster relief, and others are to be used for other things. But I think the accusation that the Democrats are making is that Donald Trump asked for FEMA dollars to be redirected for illegal aliens and migrants. That actually never happened, according to rollcall.com. Now, if you want to find me on X, I posted this story. Rollcall.com has their own version of what they say happened. And it's all this congressional voting on funding between Congress, the Senate, and the White House. And it's, to be perfectly honest, it is impossible to explain on the radio without putting everybody to sleep. But it was part of a larger bill. And as far as I can tell, during Trump's time, there were no funds diverted from disaster relief to migrants. Go check it out online on X at Dan Mandis Show. I've got the whole explanation right there. Got a lot more straight ahead.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. During the commercial breaks, if you could only see me trying to edit this 2.5 to 3 minute montage, and it's a montage of Black Americans, Black men, who are responding to audio of Barack Obama shaming them for not wanting to support Kamala Harris. This is a story that came up. I think it was percolating as Gary and Eric were wrapping up their show on Thursday night, Friday morning, and then it really blew up Friday and over the weekend. And it was, Obama, I'll play you the audio in the complete segment coming up. But if you want to know where I'm going, because, again, there's a lot of news this morning about polling, and it is not good for Kamala Harris. But if you want to know where I'm going, follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. I'm going to warn you that this 2.5 to 3 minute audio montage of Black Americans reacting to Barack Obama, saying basically that if they don't support Kamala Harris, they're a misogynist and they're sexist. The audio is not for the faint of heart, my friends. People have a lot to say about what Barack Obama had to say, and I'm just going to tell you, it's not good. If you watch the audio montage, you can follow me on X. I posted it there. There's a lot of curse words on there, which is why I'm trying to clean it up for the radio, but I'm here to tell you that for Barack Obama, if he sees that, and I, by the way, tagged him in the post, I hope he understands that the message that is being sent to him directly is one that hopefully he receives that message, because I knew the reaction was going to be hostile with what he said to Black men. I'll talk about that and a whole lot more as the morning continues. Real quickly, then I'm going to get to your calls. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. I was wrapping up this conversation with Mike Johnson and Kirsten Welker. Mike Johnson, of course, Speaker of the House of Representatives. And Johnson was basically telling Welker, listen, you're not covering the stories that the American people want to see covered. And he used the example of the FEMA dollars and how you have all of these people on the left that are saying, oh, no, it wasn't Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who redirected those FEMA dollars. It was actually Donald Trump. That's who it was. And I'm trying to read through all of this. And again, as I said before the break, it's like semantics. And so rollcall.com, I posted on my X feed this, I called it a mind-bending analysis from rollcall.com as to Donald Trump in this accusation that it was he and not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who redirected the funds. Now, the bottom line is it's a whole bunch of, government spending within agencies, and it's really complicated. But the most important sentence from rollcall.com is that FEMA at the time said that there was plenty of money in the account, and FEMA had plenty of money, and disaster relief efforts were not affected. That's not the case right now. When Donald Trump was in office, when he is accused of diverting funds from disaster relief to help migrants and illegal aliens, and they say that's not necessarily true, but FEMA came out and said that they're unaffected. But that's not the case right now. I love what Peter Doocy said the other day when he was accused of misinformation when it came to asking about funding for Ukraine and migrant resettlement and disaster relief. And how Alejandro Mayorkas is out there saying, oh, no, we're not going to make it through the hurricane season. We're out of money. And the American people are like, are you kidding me? How are you out of money? Well, we know how they're out of money. We know how the government and the Biden administration is out of money. Because they've spent $650 million on resettling migrants in the last couple of years, and we've spent $175 billion on Ukraine with no end in sight. And all of a sudden, FEMA's running out of money? And on the issue of illegal immigration and Ukraine, the American people, by and large, are with Donald Trump on those two particular issues. And remember when Cringe Jean-Pierre, she said, oh, no. The questions that you're asking, Peter Doocy, this is all fake news and misinformation. When he was asking, he literally asked her the question, how should the American people feel when you are giving $175 billion for Ukraine, $650 million on resettling migrants, and now you're telling us that you don't have enough money to get through hurricane season? Are you kidding me? And so Friday morning after Gary and Eric got off the air, Peter Doocy posted this.
To a lot of people watching these briefings, a taxpayer dollar is a taxpayer dollar is a taxpayer dollar. That is not misinformation. That is a fact.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. And we can, again, it feels like there's a recurring theme with a lot of these weekend shows, the Sunday shows, and that is they're trying to debunk or fact check Donald Trump when the reality is that they're just playing semantic games. And the reality is that the American people are really angry at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And that is the reason why we're seeing Donald Trump go up in the polls. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. Thank you to Michael for calling in on Red Eye Radio. Michael, thank you for calling in. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
Yes, I live in Denver. I've lived in Denver my whole entire life, and I can't tell you how this city has declined with all these migrants. If you have an hour, I can explain it to you, but it is wide and deep, and it's Aurora is it's just east of Denver, and all of these migrants are they're going over there in these apartments. You can go listen to Cindy Montoya on YouTube. She's a tenant there. She explains all of it. You can go see the cars with bullet holes in them, and then breaking down doors. It's all out there. It's all out there. The proof is out there. But the reason
Michael, if I may, though, it's got to be frustrating for the people of Denver when you have some of the folks that are in power, like the mayor of Aurora, who basically just says, yeah, this isn't happening.
They're playing it down. They're playing it down. And he's a Republican. Yeah. Mike Kaufman, he was in Congress. Mm-hmm. And he got beat by a Democrat who took his seat here in Arapahoe County.
Well, the reason, Michael, if I may, from what I read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons why some say he got beat was because he distanced himself from Donald Trump, and he literally came out and said, I will stand up to Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's been years ago. Yeah. But, they're covering it up, and the police, Polis took away most of their immunity. You don't even see cops anymore on the street. Yeah. I would estimate 30% of the cars driving in Denver Metro do not have valid license plates. They've got expired license. Some have no license plates. There's people driving around with no insurance. My friend had a good friend that got T-boned by one of these people, and she got hurt, and no insurance. No, he didn't even own the car.
Yeah, we saw rampant. That. We saw that in Springfield, Ohio, too. They just give them licenses.
It's rampant. You have these people walking up and down the middle of the streets, trying to wash your windows and beg for money. We have drug addicts on the off ramps of highways. So you could just watch them shoot up.
The decline of Denver, Colorado, and the surrounding communities, I think, is yet another testament to what happens when you have Democrat rule.
Absolutely. We have one party rule here, and it's just sick. The ERs at Denver Health are way overrun. There's like a $300 million deficit. They don't take care of the parks anymore because they don't have the money. Yep. Denver bought, I think, 7 hotels in Metro to house migrants. One of the embassy suites and the DoubleTrees. They bought these hotels, and they are full of migrants that have nothing but trouble with them.
So, Michael, let me ask you a question. I would assume that the majority of folks in Denver realize how bad it is, but I guess the question would be, when Governor Jared Polis, when he is up for re-election, or when the city council is up for re-election, what party is going to win, the Republicans or the Democrats? Obviously the Democrats.
Let me tell you, it's like California. We have mail-in balloting. I got my, Colorado is the state that tried to take Trump off the ballot.
Oh, I remember
that.
I sure do.
Oh, yeah. So I can't confidently say that, there's probably so much corruption in that. We have one-party rule. And a lot of people there's just a lot of liberal Democrats, just like California, and most of Colorado is red. It's Denver, Boulder, Aspen, and a few other cities that are blue. And it's a shame. And everything they touch, they ruin. I mean, everything. And it is unbelievable. I'm moving out.
All right, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go, Michael?
I'm not sure.
Right.
A lot of my friends already moved to Texas. We had friends. We had an Arvada police officer. I was on the plane going to Florida. She had enough. She went and got a job as a police officer in Florida. She was a 20-year veteran in Arvada because she just can't take it anymore. And these cops, they've lost their immunity. They're so overwhelmed with what's going on. They don't know where to begin.
I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I very much appreciate the call. I live in Nashville, as I said, and it's a very red state. And our Governor Bill Lee, put out a call, and he basically said, listen, if you're in New York, if you're in Chicago, if you're in Denver, if you're in some of these really blue cities that are disintegrating before our eyes, and this was before the migrant crisis, he said, we need officers here in the great state of Tennessee. And he got, just a massive amount of resumes, because you do have, as Michael was saying, you have these officers in these blue states that are just dying to get out for many different reasons. And they're going to places where the rule of law is respected, like the state of Florida, like the state of Texas, like the state of Tennessee. And Michael, again, I appreciate the call. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. It's Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Let me play this real quick, in case you haven't heard it. This is Barack Obama, and he was caught on a recording talking about and shaming black men for not supporting Kamala Harris.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. Second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly and say that when you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles, pain, and joy that comes from those experiences.
So because you heard him, he's talking to the brothers. Well, the brothers have responded, and they've done so on social media, and they've done so on X. Now, my name is Dan Mandis. If you follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show, you're going to see an audio montage, a video montage of what folks are saying. I'm going to air quote here, what the brothers are saying back to Barack Obama. And I'm going to tell you, I predicted exactly this response, and I'm sure that you could imagine that the black community has not responded kindly to Barack Obama. Wait till you hear this audio. It's coming up on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric, they return in a week. You can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. Also, throw the host a bone and follow me on X if you would at Dan Mandis Show. There's a lot that I post every single day. And so if you want to check me out, you can, again, on X and Facebook at Dan Mandis Show. So Barack Obama, he decided that he was going to call out as he says, the brothers and castigate them, demonize them for not supporting Kamala Harris. Now, I'm telling you, we held I'm a morning show host on WTN Radio in Nashville, Tennessee. And we're doing a debate watch party, a vice presidential debate watch party a while back, and October 9th. And the question was posed, who does Kamala Harris need to bring to her table, bring to her side, get under her tent? And I said, black Americans. Because everywhere I was looking on social media and in some of the polling as well, she was not doing well with black Americans. Specifically black men. And so in what can only be described as an act of desperation, who do they roll out? Who do the Democrats roll out? Because remember, she's not doing well in the polling. They roll out Barack Obama, who had a message for the brothers.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running.
So, and I'm going to lead you along here because I know their audio is not great. Basically what he's saying, and this is at a fundraiser. He's saying that we have not seen the same kind of enthusiasm and turnout when I was running for Kamala Harris. And so the answer to that is, okay, well, look at Kamala Harris. Number one, at the time, Barack Obama in year one, he didn't have a track record. There really wasn't a whole heck of a lot to judge him on, except the whole hopey-changey thing. But the reason why black Americans are not necessarily digging what Kamala Harris is trying to sell is because she's got 4 years, almost 4 years, of a record with Joe Biden. And I don't mean to belabor the point, but friends, those were not good years. Reminder to Barack Obama. We had 9.3% inflation rate. We've got all these illegal aliens coming into our country. They're suppressing the wages. They're taking the jobs of Americans, including many black Americans. Oh, and by the way, it was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who forced the black community and all Americans to take a vaccine. And the price of stuff is still really high. So maybe that's the reason, Brock, maybe that's the reason why, as you say, the brothers aren't supporting Kamala Harris.
Now, I also want to say that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers.
Uh-huh.
So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly and say that when you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles, pain, and joy that comes from those experiences.
All right, so that is Barack Obama. And by the way, part of the big part of this story is the admission that Kamala Harris and the black vote, the black support, is lacking in excitement and numbers. Now, this was from Fox News. According to several reports, Obama then went on to contrast the vision, presumably of Kamala Harris, and that of former President Donald Trump. Appearing to continue to address black Americans, Obama said the real estate mogul turned politician is someone who has consistently shown disregard, not just for the communities, but for you as a person. And you're thinking about sitting this one out, Barack Obama says? The 44th president went on to say that many people apprehensive of Kamala Harris are coming up with, quote, all kinds of reasons and excuses to either sit at home or support another candidate. The quote is, part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly, that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. In other words, he's calling black men sexist. He's calling black men misogynist. Former DeKalb County, Georgia executive Vernon Jones, I think it's DeKalb County, Georgia executive Vernon Jones, a longtime Democrat who joined the GOP in 2021, reacted on X by saying Obama was being dispatched by, quote, white liberals to black man-splain why fellow African Americans should vote for Kamala Harris. No thanks, B.O. Blacks had enough of you and Kamala Harris, Jones said in a post. Now, when this whole thing came out, this was on Friday, and this whole thing comes out, dailymail.com, the headline was, Barack Obama berates black men as he reveals huge problem with Kamala Harris' campaign that could cost her the race. Not acceptable, Barack Obama said. And the caption under the accompanying photo was, not cool, bro. So he's caught on mic berating black men for not supporting Kamala Harris. Then he goes out on stage.
Because there are a lot of Americans who are still struggling out there. So I get it, why people are looking to shake things up. I mean, I am the hopey-changey guy. So I understand people feeling frustrated and feeling we can do better. What I cannot understand is why anybody would think that Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you.
Mm-hmm. Weird he is saying that about Trump because we know that Trump did wonders for the economy with his tax cuts and his deregulation. He never forced vaccines on folks like Biden did, which was incredibly unpopular with the black community and many Americans. Donald Trump never had 9.3% inflation rate. Donald Trump never had tens of millions of illegal aliens coming across our southern border. Donald Trump didn't have wages suppressed by all those illegal aliens coming into our country. Donald Trump didn't have all of these illegal aliens being either flown in or just allowed in so that once great American cities would be destroyed. And you know who lives in a lot of those once great American cities? Black folks. So when Obama tries to Obama-splain, I can't understand why more people would not be voting for Kamala Harris. Well, let me ask you, former President Barack Obama, when was the last time you got out of your bubble? When was the last time you visited a place like Denver, Colorado? When was the last time you visited a place like Springfield, Ohio? Aurora, Colorado? When was the last time you visited any of those places that have fallen victim to Democrat rule? You haven't. When was the last time you went to San Francisco? When was the last time you went to Los Angeles? When was the last time you, Barack Obama, came face to face with the ramifications of Democrat policies and the very same policies that you adhere to, that you support, and that you recommend? Because let's face it, he is the one, in my opinion, many opinions, he's the one that's running the Democrat Party right now. He's the one that is running the Biden administration. So this is on you, Barack. And so basically, the reaction to this has not been good. Has not been good at all. As a matter of fact, black men from across the country are reacting on social media.
Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party. We vote for Trump, right?
This message is for Barack. Ain't never did a thing for this in the 8 years he was in the White House ever. Obama. Keep black men's name out your mouth.
Like, ain't nobody trying to listen to you, bro. You didn't get the memo? We ain't got 2 words for you. Yes, we do. High and by. B-O.
So they sent Obama to come get us and bring us back to the Democratic plantation. They sent Obama back to come get us. He insulted us. He said, I was highly offended when he said the only reason we voting for Donald Trump is because we don't want a woman in president, so we come up with... just shut up. Shut up.
Barack Hussein Obama, the audacity of you to say to us that we are required and we better vote for Kamala Harris and that we don't want to see a woman in a position of power. You're a liar.
This message is for President Obama. First and foremost, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. Number one, I ain't going to vote for Kamala Harris. I think that she's going to make a bad president. She's a bad vice president. Everything she does, she tries to politicize it, and she hasn't shown the fact that she wants to put America first ever. So I'm not voting for that individual. Secondly, I think that it's really sad that you would come out against black men and actually degrade them because they're not picking the person that you want them to vote for.
You all brought up Barack Obama to try to get us black men back to the demonic Democratic Party, behalf of all the men who are educated, who have learned their lesson, and was burned by the Democratic Party. We want nothing to do with the Democratic Party. We stand with Donald J. Trump.
Boom. Now, if you want to see, because I know that was long, I actually edited a lot out. And I had to, because there's a lot of how passionate does the black community feel about what Barack Obama, and don't forget, this is not only Barack Obama, this is the Democrat Party. This is what the Democrat Party, in my opinion, thinks of black folks who are not supporting Kamala Harris. There's a lot of curse words in there, a lot of stuff I couldn't air because people are angry and they're insulted. And they're looking at Barack Obama with his homes in Hawaii, his massive homes in Washington, D.C., his places to stay in Martha's Vineyard. I could go on. Where he doesn't necessarily have to deal with the ramifications of Democrat rule, of Democrat reign. And so people are ticked. This did not go well. If you want to see the whole thing, follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. I'm just telling you, it is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of words in there that I can't air on the radio, nor would I want to. But they're words that Barack Obama and the Democrat Party need to hear. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis, it for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. I host a morning show, by the way, in Nashville, Tennessee, on a proud Red Eye Radio affiliate, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I host the morning show 6 to 10 Eastern, and you can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. You can also follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. Listen to this headline. How Joe Biden's fury at being overthrown by Kamala Harris now threatens to derail Kamala Harris's campaign. Big story in Axios. Now, the Harris campaign is so full of problems. It's like you've got falling momentum. You've got polling that is beginning to bottom out. I've got some polling numbers, and I've got a whole big story on the polling coming up in the next segment. But there's just a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems with the Harris campaign. But is it any surprise that Joe Biden is angry at Kamala Harris? Is it any surprise that Joe Biden, about a month or so ago, put on a MAGA hat at a union event? Is it any surprise that Joe Biden, knowing that Kamala Harris was about to make a major speech, decided to come out to the White House press briefing, and for the first time in ever, I believe, he just stopped by to answer questions right when Harris was getting ready to take the podium and go speak to that union and to the American people on some really important policy issues. Just as that moment is coming, Joe Biden walks into the room. And remember the other day, I'm sure Gary and Eric were talking about it, where Harris, part of the news cycle last week was Kamala Harris complaining that Ron DeSantis wasn't taking her calls, and he was politicizing the whole thing, and she's trying to make political points. And then Joe Biden comes out and he says, well, the Florida governor and I, we're communicating big time. I gave him my cell phone number. Things are going great. And that left Kamala Harris vulnerable. That made her look silly. That made her look like she is really making a lot out of nothing, which I believe that she was. Because as Ron DeSantis says, and I don't want to elongate last week's news cycle, but she had no role. Kamala Harris had no role in dealing with the aftermath of these hurricanes. You know who has a role? Ron DeSantis. Talking about Milton. Ron DeSantis, Joe Biden, FEMA, and local authorities. That's who has a role. DeSantis literally came out and said, Kamala Harris has no role. And you know who punctuated that point? Joe Biden. So, yeah. Vice President Kamala Harris's team has experienced increased tension with Joe Biden's staff, nearly a dozen people familiar with the situation detailed to Axios in a new report. While aides say that Biden and his team want Harris to win in November, many have lingering bruises from the president being pushed out of his re-election bid. They're too much into their feelings, a Harris ally said of Biden's team. In recent weeks, the conflict has simmered to the public, where some actions have raised eyebrows over the tension between the president and his VP. And on it goes. For example, they say Biden, for the first time, made that surprise appearance in the White House press briefing room on Friday. At the same time, Harris was gearing up for a campaign event in Michigan. I mean, I've got audio from a little bit ago where CNN was actually saying, I think it was CNN, and they're saying we were literally getting ready to go to Kamala Harris when Joe Biden came out, and we stuck with Biden, and Kamala Harris will not get the exposure that she so desperately wants. And
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
I'll go ahead and post this story to my X feed at Dan Mandis Show, but this is fascinating. Again, the headline, how Joe Biden's fury at being overthrown by Kamala Harris now threatens to derail his VP's campaign. A couple of things just real quick. I don't think it's just Joe Biden that is derailing her campaign. She is derailing her campaign. I mean, let's be honest. Kamala Harris flip-flopped on all of those issues. She has the unique ability to just talk her way into a corner and try to talk her way out of that corner, but she speaks in circulars. She speaks in circles. And so the more that she speaks, the further behind she's getting in the polls. And Donald Trump knows what's going on. They mentioned this in the article. Right before the break, if you're just joining us, just allow me 30 seconds to reset. Joe Biden has shown that he is absolutely hostile to Kamala Harris. Case in point, he put on that Trump hat. Back in, was that Michigan or was that Pennsylvania? I'm not sure. But he put on that Trump hat at one of those, at one of the stops that he made on the campaign trail. That was number one. Number two, Kamala Harris getting ready to speak at a very important function. Joe Biden literally stole her thunder when he decided to walk out into the White House press briefing and start answering questions. He stole her thunder. He stole her spotlight. And then when Kamala Harris was trying to engage Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, in, some sort of a battle over him not returning her phone calls as he is dealing with a hurricane, she accused DeSantis of politicizing the hurricane by not returning her calls or not taking her calls. And Joe Biden comes out and says, no, I'm talking to and I'm dealing with DeSantis. we're dealing with FEMA, and we're dealing with local officials basically saying that Kamala Harris has no role in this. That was the president that did that. And Ron DeSantis basically said the same thing. So from inside the White House, they're talking about over a dozen people that are saying that there is a massive rift between Biden and Harris and their individual camps. Now, that's been going on for a long time. Some Harris aides say that White House staffers are intentionally not working with Biden's messaging and scheduled to align it with what would best benefit the 2024 candidate's campaign, according to the Axios report. They say the White House is lacking someone in the room thinking first and foremost about how things would impact the campaign, a person in Harris's campaign said. Last week, Harris expressed criticism of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for refusing to take her calls about the hurricane relief efforts and slammed him for calling her outreach politically motivated. Shortly after that, as I just told you, Joe Biden praised the Republican governor for being gracious and cooperative during their calls. It can't be fun in the Biden White House right now. It just can't. Because things are not going well. And here's the problem that Kamala Harris has, is that all that momentum that she had coming out of the big debate that she had with Donald Trump, remember that whole thing? She has lost a ton of that momentum. And the reason why is because she really doesn't have the ability to defend or even define in any coherent fashion what she wants to do for the American people. And so now they're looking at a lot of that momentum is just going away. And so now what's going on is they're looking at the polling. And you know what they're seeing? They're seeing that Donald Trump is actually doing a lot better than Kamala Harris. Now, Harris may be ahead by a point or two in some of these battleground states, but not all. That's number one. And number two, it shows that the Harris campaign is panicking. NBC did a new poll, and it really shows that Harris is losing momentum, and that's why the Democrats are panicking. Because the policies are not on Kamala Harris's side. The track record is not on Kamala Harris's side. It is increasingly appearing that Joe Biden is not on Kamala Harris's side. And now she's out there trying to, talk up the things that she wants to do, but it keeps landing flat. And so NBC does a poll. This was on Meet the Press. This is Steve Kornacki, and let's just say that this is not good for the Democrats.
It is a tie game here weeks before the election, and it's that shift. Our last poll taken in the wake of that September debate, Harris had opened up that advantage over Trump. Gone in our new poll.
Yep, that is gone in the new poll. All that momentum that Kamala Harris had is now gone. So it may be tied, but the shift in momentum is huge. So as Kornacki is going through this, and you can find this whole thing on the Dan Mandis Show X feed. In September, Kamala Harris was at 49%. Now, she's at 48%. She lost one. Trump was at 44% overall. He is now at 48%. So Kamala has lost 1% and Trump is up by 4%. So Donald Trump has gone up by 4%. And by the way, that's for the general election. But the point for this Steve Kornacki is that all of that momentum she had has shifted. It's now gone. All of that stuff that she had, all of that mojo after the debate is now gone. The basic perception or feelings towards a candidate, both are 43% positive. Donald Trump is at 51% negative. Harris is at 49% negative. But what is stunning about this number is the amount of free positive publicity and coverage that the media has given Kamala Harris. So they're both at 43% positive. They're basically tied negative. But look at the amount of free positive publicity and the coverage that she has gotten. I mean, look at 60 Minutes. Look at 60 Minutes where they edited her interview to make her look more concise and more confident. We'll get into that in a second because people want an actual investigation into 60 Minutes. But also think about the amount of negative coverage that they have been given to Donald Trump. They're always attacking him. They're always attacking J.D. Vance. And yet they're tied in the positive and basically tied in the negative. That's crazy. Here's the bigger issue. Last month in September, Kamala Harris had a 48% positive rating. That positive rating has now dropped to 42%. Her negative rating has jumped 45% to 49%. So her negative rating is up by 4. Her positive rating has dropped. Meantime, Donald Trump's negative rating has dropped and his positive rating has jumped.
On the immigration and the border, we asked voters who would be better on this. In September, Trump had a big advantage. It's gotten bigger. On inflation and the cost of living, Trump's advantage now hits double digits. And on the question of who represents change, Harris had the advantage in September. She still does, but lower.
Yeah. In other words, I mean, I can only say it so many different times. Trump has the momentum. Kamala Harris is crashing. Hence the previously mentioned panic within the Democrat Party and Kamala Harris. I hear things are also not good between Harris and Tim Walz. Because let's face it, Tim Walz is a complete and utter train wreck as well. So the number of people who think Donald Trump would be better on the border and inflation has all gone up big time for Donald Trump. By the way, those are also the two biggest issues the American people are voting on. Which candidate is the change candidate? Well, that'd still be Harris, but she's losing ground there as well. People are actually now seeing Donald Trump as the change candidate, which, by the way, makes a lot more sense. There's a ton of stories out there on polling today, and they all show the same thing, that Donald Trump has the momentum and Kamala Harris has completely lost that momentum. You can see all these stories on the Dan Mandis Show X feed. This is from Business Insider. The vice president and her opponent were tied in a new NBC News national poll of likely voters. They were tied, both sitting at 48%. In a CBS poll, Harris was ahead by 1 point nationally, 51 to 50%, and behind 49 to 48% in a consolidation of battleground states. Both results well within the margin of error. And in an ABC News poll of registered voters, Harris was ahead 49 to 47%. The polls hint at the same pictures, which a slew of swing state voter surveys drew this past week. Kamala Harris likely remains in a slight lead among all voters nationwide, but, and that it is a huge but, what they're seeing in key battleground states is that Kamala Harris is in danger of falling to Donald Trump in the battleground states, namely in Michigan, in Arizona, and in Pennsylvania. Sunday's batch of national polls follows releases from several polling outfits this past week. A new Quinnipiac poll of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan this week shows Donald Trump leading in the latter two, in Wisconsin and Michigan. Real Clear Politics polling That now shows that Donald Trump is ahead for the first time in months in the state of Michigan. Also, in Real Clear Politics in Pennsylvania, because, Gary and Eric love Real Clear Politics, as they should, Pennsylvania specifically, they show Donald Trump at 48.2% and Kamala Harris at 48.1%. Now, why is that? Well, I think it's obvious. Because Kamala Harris is unable to defend her past policies with Joe Biden, and she's unable to define or defend her policies moving forward as a presidential candidate. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. Have you seen this video? Tim Walz's hunting gaffe. So, you know that he was supposed to go out and he was supposed to, bond with men, right? And he was going to go pheasant hunting with men. He was going to have interviews talking about football and all of this other nonsense. Well, things didn't go as planned out on the pheasant hunting trail.
And it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This was a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
Yeah, here's the problem. He's being mercilessly mocked online because he wasn't able to load the shotgun. If you heard the video, you could tell that he was trying to get the bullets in and it just wouldn't go in. Now, this is a guy who keeps saying that he is such a great shot, he's experienced with guns, so on and so forth. And by the way, he is. But he just wasn't able to load the gun. And so it's almost like if it can go wrong, it will go wrong for Tim Walz. And now here's a headline from the Daily Mail. Did Kamala Harris choose the wrong running mate? They say that she would be in line to win the critical state of Pennsylvania if she had just picked battleground state governor Josh Shapiro as her running mate. But according to the Daily Mail, obviously, she did not choose Josh Shapiro. I've got some theories on this I'm going to explore coming up next on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you listening. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. They return a week from this morning. I'm a morning host in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Do me a favor, follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. You can also find me on Facebook. All right, so I'm going to admit that I don't always understand some of the stuff that's on social media. So when I saw this whole thing with Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, have you seen this? I'll get to the, if you're left over from the last hour, there's a story about Josh Shapiro. I'm going to get to that. But I want you to go look at this on X. find me at Dan Mandis Show, where there's just a weird video that Gretchen Whitmer did. The headline, Gretchen Whitmer apologizes for Doritos video that critics are saying mock Christian sacrament. And so basically what is happening is she is wearing a Harris Walz campaign hat, and she fed a Dorito to a kneeling liberal podcast host in what some critics said make a mockery of a sacred Christian rite. They're saying that she's mocking the Holy Communion because, you know, you've got the liberal podcaster, she's on her knees, and then you've got, Gretchen Whitmer, and she's wearing all kinds of Harris Walz clothing, and she gives a Dorito to the kneeling podcaster, and people are like, well, that's like the sacrament. The Democrat was seen in the clip taking a Doritos chip out of a bag and placing it into the mouth of a kneeling liberal podcaster, Liz Plank, before the video panned to the governor wearing a camouflage Harris Walz hat, while Whitmer said the video was intended to spotlight the 2022 Chips and Science Act. Oh, please. People are saying, no, this is a spoof of the sacrament of Holy Communion. That's what this is. I looked at it. I'm going to be honest with you. It just didn't make any sense to me. Yet Tim Walz is out there saying that it's the Republicans that are weird. It's actually the Democrats. And so now she's got to apologize. I want you to go check it out. There's a story on it along with the link to the video, Dan Mandis Show on X. But you know what this tells you? This tells you that it's just another misfire by Kamala Harris. So now there's this story in the Daily Mail. Kamala Harris would be in line to win Pennsylvania if she had chosen Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as her running mate. So if she had picked Josh Shapiro, because, Pennsylvania, a lot of people are saying that bottom line, whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the race. Okay. It's like razor thin, razor close, especially in Pennsylvania. Trump's a little bit ahead now. But why didn't she choose Josh Shapiro? Well, he's Jewish. That's number one. Number two, he's pro-Israel, as you can imagine. And so a lot of people will tell you that she didn't choose Josh Shapiro because she had to be mindful of the far left of her party, the anti-Semitic wing of the Democrat Party. I think it's something different, though. You know what I think? I think that Kamala Harris was not someone that Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania governor, wanted to run with. I think that Josh Shapiro, who is a really sharp guy, and Donald Trump was really worried about Josh Shapiro. I was really worried about Josh Shapiro because he's smart. He can tell one heck of a speech. He can give one heck of a speech. And he's just, as far as a politician goes, he's really good. Tim Walz can't hold a candle to Josh Shapiro. And so I think part of what happened is Shapiro, knowing the train wreckery that would be a campaign with Kamala Harris, he let the powers that be know, guys, I've got my own presidential aspirations, and my presidential aspirations will be destroyed if I run with Kamala Harris. I think that's what happened. I think he said to the Democrat Party, I don't want to be her running mate because my political career will be over, even if she wins. Let's say that she won and Josh Shapiro is her running mate, and so he gets to be the vice president. He knows that the last 4 years have been an absolute train wreck. And so he didn't want to destroy his political career by riding the coattails of Kamala Harris. because she's just terrible. And so I believe that one of two things happened. She decided for whatever reason to go with Tim Walz. I think also there's the part of the story that I would agree with, that she also didn't want someone who would outshine her. I mean, Josh Shapiro is that good. But I do believe that Shapiro was like, no, thanks anyway. But had she chosen Shapiro, if they had somehow decided to get together, she would be up by 1 point in Pennsylvania. But instead, she's down a point because she chose Tim Walz. And let's face it, Tim Walz is kind of a goofball. Tim Walz himself is kind of weird. But again, when you look at all of the weirdness that's going on right now in the Democrat Party, none of this is real surprising. Because as I covered for you in painstaking detail earlier, you've got Kamala Harris. Her momentum is absolutely gone, shifted to Donald Trump. And everything they do, it's like they're snake bit, because everything they try and do is a complete and utter mess. For example, I played this audio in the last hour. You have Tim Walz, who apparently, as you know, he took weapons into combat, right? He couldn't even load his own gun as he was taking possible voters out to peasant hunt.
And it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400.
And apparently, as he's out pheasant hunting, he doesn't even, some people are saying that's even the wrong gun to use when you're going pheasant hunting. I have no idea. What I know is that he can't get it loaded. And he has been bragging about how he's some great marksman.
I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap, because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
All right, so we have Tim Walz going pheasant hunting, and he's simply unable to load the gun. So that's a bad look. That is a bad look. David Urban, I think that's how you say his name. On the Sunday shows, I watch them, and as I joke in Nashville, where I host a morning radio show, I watch the weekend shows so that you don't have to. So David Urban was on CNN, and he is talking about Kamala Harris's bad, awful week.
She had a terrible week. It was a terrible week for the Harris this campaign. You had Gretchen Whitmer having to apologize to the Catholics across America for mocking them with some bizarro Dorito thing on there. You had Governor Elmer Fudd out hunting and not knowing how to load his shotgun, using the wrong gun. At the same time,
who's Governor Elmer Fudd?
Governor Walz was out there. It looked like Elmer Fudd. Be very, very quiet while hunting for rabbits.
Oh my God.
Right? So he can't load his shotgun. He's trying to appeal to hunters. He can't load the gun. He's using the wrong gun. At the same time, you have Barack Obama in Pennsylvania where he derided people who own guns. Remember, people in Pennsylvania were bitter and they clinged to guns and religion. Remember that in 2008? So they're trying to appeal to those folks at the same time while he alienates black male voters by chastising them. So they had a really tough week this week.
Yeah, they did. They had a very difficult week. A very difficult week. And I think that the fact that they thought that it was a good idea to trot out Barack Obama, I played the audio in the last hour. I'm going to spare you this hour. But they thought it was a good idea to trot out Barack Obama and basically castigate or criticize men for not supporting Kamala Harris and call them sexist. Not a good plan. Then you add this. Tim Walz's wife put out this video. You ready? This is just plain bizarre.
Hey, Kamala HQ. I'm Gwen Walz, and I have been an educator for a really long time, and I'm here with an assignment for you today. It's due on November 5th. Now I'm going to put my teacher classes on because this is really serious, like a final, and there's no late work. I need you to take yourself and 3 friends to the ballot box and make your voice heard. You have to vote. I'm going to repeat that again. You and 3 of your friends have to make your voices heard by voting. If you need more information, just go to iwillvote.com. And remember, no late work.
So, I asked the question on Friday on my local show. Is cringe now the new cool? Is cringe the new cool? Because it's like everything Kamala Harris does, it is so, like, cringy. And at this point, just like everything they do is simply put not working. I love Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings is like the only voice on CNN that actually not only makes any sense, but is really good, actually. Is really good at political analysis. I want you to listen as he speaks the truth. Again, this is on CNN.
It was a rough week. I mean, her faves are down. They're struggling with, the front page of the New York Times this morning, Democrats struggling with African-American voters, particularly African-American men. This gender gap issue is real. It's a real problem, and you see the Democrats reacting to it. And I think what they are now finally in October, the election, coming to realize is that a lot of men think Democrats care more about dudes who want to become women than dudes who just want to be dudes.
Well,
and no hunting costs.
Well, why are they? Can I ask a question? Why do you have all of these other people on this panel saying, "Oh, that's uncalled for"? When he said that the Harris campaign, they care more about dudes that want to be women than dudes that just want to be dudes. I mean, please, somebody tell me where he's wrong.
African-American men. This gender gap issue is real. It's a real problem, and you see the Democrats reacting to it. And I think what they are now finally in October, the election, coming to realize is that a lot of men think Democrats care more about dudes who want to become women than dudes who just want to be dudes. And no hunting, cosplay, or cringy videos is going to change it. The bet is made. Working class men, whether you're black, Hispanic, or white, persistently, consistently do not believe the Democratic Party, and specifically Kamala Harris, are going to do a thing for them. They've been told that they're the problem, and I suspect they're going to rise up on Election Day and tell the elites who told them that you're wrong.
I agree. I agree. And the polling, I was telling you in one of the previous hours, the polling that came out on Sunday, there's one consistency throughout the whole poll, all the polling. And that consistency within all of the polling is that it is clear that Kamala Harris is losing her momentum. And that's a bad place to be, because the only way that she can get her momentum back is by speaking. And when she speaks, bad things happen. We'll return next. It's Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. At a roadside inspection, inspectors may ask to see supporting documents. A supporting document is a document generated or received by a motor carrier in the normal course of business that can be used by law enforcement to verify a driver's logs. These documents can include bills of lading, itineraries, schedules, or equivalent documents that indicate the origin and destination of each trip. They can also include dispatch or trip records, expense receipts related to on-duty/not driving periods, including receipts for meals, lodging, and fuel, electronic mobile communication transmitted through a fleet management system, and payroll records, settlement sheets, or equivalent documents that indicate payment to a driver. Drivers using paper logs must also keep toll receipts. Supporting documents must contain the driver's name, carrier-assigned identification number or vehicle unit number that can be linked to the driver, the date, the name of the nearest city, town, or village, and the time. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. That is where we find Bill in Los Angeles on Red Eye Radio. Bill, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Dan. By the way, characterizing Tim Walz as Elmer Fudd is demeaning to Elmer Fudd. I think it'd be more accurate to characterize him as Uncle Fester.
You know what? That's actually very good. I may steal that for my morning show. Thank you, Bill.
As a former journalist, newspaper journalist, Columbia J School, 86, who knew actual good producers of people like Edward R. Murrow, back in the classic period, I consider that 60 Minutes interview to be fraudulent. That editing was just fraudulent.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'll maybe get to the update on that story. There really isn't much of one, except people are asking for an investigation. People that used to work in 60 Minutes are asking for an investigation. But, here's the thing, is that to most people who care enough to pay attention to that story, when you see what they did, and again, I'll get into it in the next segment, but when you see what they did, which is just they took an answer from earlier in the interview and placed it and replaced one part of the interview where she was struggling to answer, and they made her sound a lot better, a lot more confident, and a lot more concise, and took out the less than concise answer, the less than confident answer, and put a new one in. I mean, whether or not that's justified, and it's not, I mean, the American people look at that and they realize what's going on, and that is that this media bias that is clearly pro-Kamala Harris and anti-Donald Trump, it's like they'll stoop to nothing. They'll not, they'll do anything to try to get Kamala Harris in the White House. And it's really what it is. It's a bastardization of journalism. It's what it is.
Well, Dan, the bottom line is if you're misleading the public, you've crossed the line. And I know of photographers at large newspapers who were fired just for suggesting a pose of the person they photographed, and the newspaper said, you crossed the line, you misled the public. So this is far worse than that. And they're trying to make somebody who does not speak like any lawyer I've ever interviewed or talked to. I've got a lawyer in the family. I've talked to dozens of them in my career in various capacities. I got friends. This woman does not speak like any lawyer I've ever known, and I can't imagine how she got into or out of UC Hastings School of Law were it not for her buddy Willie Brown that she ended up, living with for a while and who built her career. I can't imagine how she got in or out of that place without his help or affirmative action or legacy from her father, who's a professor. There's something strange about how this lady got in and out of law school.
Did you see, just a different topic but related, did you see J.D. Vance and his interview with Raddatz and how he just told her, do you hear what you're saying? With Martha Raddatz, because,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it is just, you want to talk about misleading the public. I'll talk a little bit about that here in the next segment as well. Bill, thanks for calling in. It's Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
It is interesting because the common theme that seems to be going through the evening tonight or the morning is that Democrats are nuts and journalism is dead. Those seem to be the two big topics tonight as I kind of move through all of the various topics that I've got this morning. There's a story, a video. When did this come out? A couple of days ago. This Aisha Miles, have you seen this? Have you heard this? Did Gary and Eric play this? Where she was talking about how she is a black lesbian and she's wondering if Donald Trump is going to have her exterminated. This is what passes for analysis on CNN and Aaron Burnett's show. Listen to this.
This, as an
Aisha,
American,
let's talk about Kamala
makes
Harris.
me really concerned.
Let's talk about Kamala Harris with
as
short-term
a
memory.
black lesbian who Donald Trump doesn't believe has genes as good as his. Is he going to attempt to
Really?
exterminate me
Why do you
when
believe
he
that,
gets
Aisha?
elected?
Why do you
Because
believe
he's
that?
damn near said it. That's why, David. That's why.
Because he's,
okay, and I'm not
has he
going to
said
be
that,
lectured by some white man who has no idea what he's talking about and is trying to rewrite history here.
Aisha,
I am
shame on you,
afraid,
Aisha.
as an American,
Aaron.
of a Donald Trump presidency, and his actual quotes
Shame
are
on you,
why.
Aisha.
Because I take him seriously, and I think that he believes what he says, and that is why he is a danger and a threat to America.
Aaron, you can't have a
All right, let me
rational
just say,
discussion
I
if somebody
appreciate-
doesn't want to talk
okay.
about topics.
Yeah, and Aaron Burnett, just let that go. Just let it go. Yet somehow it's the Republicans that are weird, right? And here's the thing. I would say to Aisha Miles, so if Donald Trump was going to try to exterminate, I'm air quoting here, if Donald Trump was going to try to exterminate all the black lesbians, wouldn't he have done that in his first term in office? I mean, think about that. If Donald Trump was such a threat to black lesbians, wouldn't he have tried to exterminate them in his first term in office? I would ask Aisha Miles. And so I would say not only shame on Aisha Miles, but you know what? Here's the thing. I expect this out of people like her. Democrat strategist. And the only thing that she understands about politics is identity politics. Common sense, right out the window. And Aaron Burnett just lets it go. And you know, it's interesting because every once in a while, Aaron Burnett seems to actually stumble upon the truth. Yes, she lets this Aisha Miles, Democrat strategist, just go on about how Donald Trump is going to exterminate black lesbians.
All right, well, this, as an
Aisha,
American,
let's talk about Kamala
makes
Harris.
me really concerned.
Let's talk about Kamala Harris with
as
short-term
a
memory.
black lesbian who Donald Trump doesn't believe has genes as good as his. Is he going to attempt to
Really?
exterminate me
Why do you
when
believe
he
that,
gets
Aisha?
elected?
Why do you
Because
believe
he's
that?
damn near said it. That's why, David. That's why.
Because he's,
okay, and I'm not
has he
going to be
said that,
lectured by some white man who has no idea what he's talking about and is trying to rewrite history here.
Aisha,
I am
shame on
afraid,
you, Aisha.
as an American,
Aaron.
of a Donald Trump presidency, and his actual quotes
Shame
are
on you,
why.
Aisha.
Because I take him seriously, and I think that he believes what he says, and that is why he is a danger and a threat to America.
Aaron, you can't have a
All right, let me
rational
just say,
discussion
I
if somebody doesn't
appreciate-
want to talk
okay.
about topics.
You remember in the cartoons we used to watch as kids? Cuckoo, cuckoo. I mean, that's what this woman is like. And yet she'll be celebrated within the Democrat circles. That's the crazy thing. She will be celebrated in Democrat circles. I was talking earlier with Bill out there in Los Angeles, and he is a former journalist, and he was talking about the CBS hack job, the editing job, where they were trying to make Kamala Harris, in my opinion, they're trying to make Kamala Harris look better by editing the interview that they did with her. Now this was actually a really good interview, I thought, with Bill Whitaker. And he was asking her serious questions, but along the way, and he challenged her. He actually had follow-up questions. But then they edited the interview to make her look more concise and more confident. Now, you've heard the story. CBS editing the Kamala Harris interview. People are demanding, including Donald Trump, by the way, that they release the full interview. Now, the question is, will they? They need to release the full unedited interview, and they need to release the transcripts. Former CBS staffers are now calling into question whether her answer was edited, why it was edited. They're demanding independent investigations into 60 Minutes. The network, in turn, has refused to release the full unedited transcript. Now, here's my question. Why would they refuse to release the full unedited transcript if you have nothing to hide? Now, if you're unfamiliar with the story, let me just reset it for you real quickly. Kamala Harris, big interview on CBS and 60 Minutes, where Face the Nation, they had a promo that ran on Face the Nation, and this is the promo. This is what was ultimately edited out.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Now you heard that her voice is shaky. She's clearly not confident in what she's saying. And I don't believe that she knows what the heck she's saying. I just don't. But they used that promo clip for Face the Nation earlier in the day. Or Friday, I guess it was, whenever. And so they have that clip. They air it as a promo, and it went on.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
All right, so she sounded really shaky. She failed to name Benjamin Netanyahu as an ally of America. And so when that promo clip came out, before the interview, man, she got roasted because she just sounded terrible. And so 60 Minutes, in turn, goes back and they edit the interview. They edit the interview so that Kamala Harris sounds more authoritative, more confident, less shaky as well. And so what they did was they took a piece of audio of Kamala Harris from earlier in the interview and placed it where that whole shaky part of her answer was, and they replaced it with this. So I want you, as I play the audio, if you haven't heard it yet, I want you to realize they took out the shaky part. They took out the part where she got really, really criticized for what she said. It was a little bit of a word salad. This is how the edited version sounded.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
All right, so you heard that answer, a lot more authoritative and a lot more confident and a lot less word salady. So now that you have that answer, that edited answer, fresh in your mind, I'm going to remind you what they edited out.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
I mean, there you go. I mean, obviously, they edited that, in my opinion, to make her look better. And here's the thing. When you make an edit to deceive the American public, that makes you the enemy of the American people, does it not? Because if you're a news organization and you are trying to mislead the American people, CBS and 60 Minutes will say, well, we weren't trying to do that. She was answering basically a similar question earlier in the interview. We just replaced that part where she sounded all shaky with this other part. We were editing for time. No, what they were doing was they were trying to deceive the public by making her seem more confident. But here's the bizarre part. The bizarre part is that they dumped it all online. They put all of the stuff online. It's like, we're going to make this edit. even though we aired the shaky voice, non-confident answer in a promo, and then when it aired on television, we had the more confident edited in, we're going to go ahead and throw it all online. So we're not trying to deceive the American people. I mean, we're putting, a lot of this material online. You'll see exactly what we did. And so people totally called them out. And now the question is, will CBS, will 60 Minutes come out and say, yes, we did edit this. We edited it because we felt like it was a better answer than the other one. But here's the thing. This shaky answer tells you all you need to know about Kamala Harris. That she is in over her head. And the American people need to know that. That's the thing. And how did all of this audio get online anyway? Because if they were trying to cover their tracks, they failed miserably. So, and the other thing, and Gary and Eric were talking about this the morning that it happened, the morning that it made all the news. They said, okay, was this done at the demand, at the request of the Harris campaign? Was this done by CBS? I mean, the Harris campaign has come out and they said, well, we have no control over how they edit the interview. That's convenient. But again, the question is, why was the interview edited and who demanded the interview be edited? Because here's the thing. I don't believe Kamala Harris or her campaign, if they come out and they say, well, we didn't say that the interview needed to be edited. We would never do that. Really? Well, here's what I know about Kamala Harris. And here's what I know about Kamala Harris's campaign. They lie about Donald Trump and Agenda 2025. They lie about Donald Trump and they say that he wants a federal ban on abortion. They lie about the border being secure. They lie about everything, literally everything. So do I really believe them when they come out and they say, oh, we had nothing to do with CBS editing that interview? I don't believe them. Do you? 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
.90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Folks are finding me on social media, sending me private messages and so forth, and I love when you do. You can send me private messages on either Facebook or Twitter and or X, and love talking to folks. And I got to tell you that this is one of the more, we've got, 27 days left? I think 27, 28 days left until the election. And it's like every single day, and I went through the numbers earlier, but maybe I'll revisit in the next hour. But listen, if you're somebody who is a fan of Donald Trump, and I'm a fan of his policies, and I got to tell you, a guy who gets up every single day knowing that he's going to go up in front of thousands of people with lackluster or subpar Secret Service, and he's willing to do it anyway, he's willing to put his life on the line for the American people, I totally understand why so many people look at Donald Trump as really a true leader here in America. Then they look at Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and it is exactly the opposite. Now, just so you know, for me, I'm all about the policy with Donald Trump. I also appreciate clearly the sacrifices that he has made. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to call him out when I think that he's wrong. We'll talk about the polling and a whole lot more straight ahead. It is Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.